Episode 4 of The Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon, The Book of Carol, Season 2, begins with Carol hiding behind some volunteers while the Guerriere kills them. They then inject the dead with the virus, which turns them into walkers with super speed. Cadron is tied to an ATV as bait, and Carol takes her chance as she takes down the driver and takes off. The walkers and the Guerriere follow her as she heads into the nest. Inside, oblivious to the chaos, Losong is trying to sway Isabel. When Losong is distracted, she cuts his face with the metal drain cover. Angry, he stabs her in the stomach. However, he doesn't have time to reconsider his actions as the Guerriere and the walkers infiltrate the nest. Carol frees Cadron, who claims he is helping her for Lawrence's sake. He covers for her while she searches for Daryl. She comes across a bleeding Isabel and saves her from a walker. While tending to her wound, Carol asks about Daryl and Isabel is surprised. Meanwhile, a young Union member is chased by walkers to the makeshift prison where he locks himself in. Daryl simply points at his chain, and once freed, he starts taking down the walkers and the Guerriere with his flail. On the other side, someone else is also picking off the crowd with a gun. With the last one dead, Daryl sees that the gunman is Carol. He is stunned before rushing to hug her. She takes him to Isabel, and he panics as he tries to carry her. Isabel is deathly pale and knows it is too late. She tells him to look after Laurent and assures him that she can already see the fireflies. She dies and Carol comforts him. It cuts to Daryl rushing to get to Laurent and Carol trying to keep up. She tells him about the plane and how everyone misses him, but he can only think about Lawrence's safety. He finds the cave empty and panics, but Carol promises to find Laurent. As they head out, Daryl is calmer and curious about how Carol made it to France. It finally hits Carol that they are not in Ohio anymore, and he tells her about DePaysan. She is amused that he is speaking French, and they bicker. He is also surprised that Cadron helped Carol. Meanwhile, Janet has captured Losong and interrogates him. But he is delighted as he believes God helped Laurent escape so Janet wouldn't get her hands on him. She simply wonders if God will be on her side if she finds Laurent. She also shares that she found a dead Isabel, and Losong is filled with regret. Back in the woods, Carol and Daryl continue to catch up. He asks what she meant by her last call in Maine of someone coming back. She reveals it wasn't a person but her old ghosts haunting her again. So, she decided to get busy and look for Daryl as she was worried about him. They find tracks, and it takes them to an old couple, Theo and Dee Dee, listening to music. What is more surprising is when Theo recognizes Daryl and mistakes Carol for Isabel. Turns out, Laurent was with them before heading to Paris. The couple is quite kind, having provided Laurent and Fallou with a car and also promising to find one for Daryl and Carol. While Theo talks about his war days and helps Daryl with the car, Carol cooks with Dee Dee. The older lady tries to push Carol towards Daryl as she reveals Laurent knew something was going on between him and Isabel. Carol deflects and asks about Theo, to which Dee Dee surprisingly reveals that he is not her husband. But Theo gave her a reason to live, and she hopes Carol finds something similar. They need car parts, and Theo, Carol, and Daryl head to a neighbor's. On the way, they see several walkers confined in their yards. Turns out, it is a village where old people retire, and the walkers are those who have passed away. While Theo convinces the amnesiac neighbor, Carol asks Daryl about Laurent. He is now unsure what to do, and Carol wonders if he is afraid of losing Laurent like she lost her daughter. Back at the couple's, Dee Dee agrees to lend some ethanol which is in a barn, and Carol once again hesitates. Dee Dee notices and comforts her as Carol tells her about Sophia. Back to her usual self, Carol and Daryl once again bicker as they try to get the car started, which amuses Theo. They are interrupted by the Guerriere, and Carol and Daryl hide while the couple sends them away by giving them food. That night, Carol gives a toy that Judith had made for Daryl and is surprised that he got close to people in France. But she is glad that he did, and he is touched that she came to find him. The next morning, as they are about to leave, the couple call them in for one last meal. However, it is a trap by Theo, who has called Janet. He shares that in a war, they need to stay on the winning side, but this angers Dee Dee. She pushes past him and hides Daryl and Carol. As they try to sneak out, Janet doesn't believe Dee Dee's lie that the Americans have left. She is about to turn them when Carol attacks. However, Carol is outnumbered and she stalls by asking Janet why she turned out the way she did. This sets off Janet, who recalls how the powerful escaped the consequences despite being the ones to start the apocalypse while the poor were left to fend for themselves. But before she can turn Carol, Daryl kills her guards. Carol gets her chance and injects Janet with the virus. As she is not a corpse, the virus blows her brains out. Carol and Daryl rush to the couple to see that Dee Dee has been shot dead. They bury her and leave a broken-hearted Theo behind. As they get the car ready, Daryl confesses how he was initially using Isabel and vice versa. Laurent is what brought them together, but he never stopped trying to get to Carol. It got harder and Carol realizes that he loved Isabel. It's a wholesome moment and Daryl decides to take Laurent with him. At the end of The Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon, The Book of Carol Episode 4, Sabine and Dr. LaFleur inform Losong that Janet is dead. He believes it is God's work and is further emboldened as Sabine shares they need to work together. He is taken to the Union and he claims Laurent will unite them and take them to the Promised Land. Which means they have to work together to find him. We knew something would go wrong the moment Daryl and Isabel kissed. After all, it is the TWD universe. But why does it always happen to poor Daryl right when he starts caring for someone? By the way, did anyone else get déjà vu when Isabel stole that metal drain cover? It was like Beth stabbing that hospital leader lady with the scissors all over again. Daryl is going to have a bad case of PTSD if he doesn't already. And funnily enough, it is always Carol who is somehow intertwined with these women right at the end, as again seen in The Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon, The Book of Carol Episode 4. How about that reunion though? It is the perfect Carol moment, badass and emotionally charged as they fight their way to each other. We were almost worried that Isabel's death would cast a shadow and dampen the reunion out of respect for her, but the writers keep the sentiments while also giving us some classic Daryl and Carol banter. With only 2 more episodes left, they better not separate them again.